So I just completed my first week on the keto diet, and I'm calling it my transition week as I strive to reduce my carbs, increase my fat, get rid of snacks altogether in the first week, and slowly get from 3 meals down to 2 meals a day. Today I'd like to show you the results from the first week and some graphs and charts that I put together. So let's go take a look. Hi, I'm Steve, and you're watching Keto Stevo. On today's episode, I'd like to take you through some of the key data points that I've been collecting over the last week and show you how I utilize those to improve my overall health and tracking and way forward for my keto diet. So the first graph is an overall of key data points for me that are really important. Those include my weight, my amount of insulin that I'm taking, how many carbs I'm intaking, and my blood glucose level. So the top line is my weight, and as you can see, it didn't change much as expected. This is a transition week. I'm not really full-blown keto yet, and it's only been 7 days. The next line down is my carb intake. So you can see it's close to 150, then it's down to under 100, but the average for this week has been 120 to 130 grams of carbohydrates per day. That's absolutely, of course, not keto. But this really represents my life the last several years, typical for me as a diabetic. Weight high, this is my target where the dotted line is. My carbohydrate intakes are very high. My blood glucose level is all over the place. My target is at 100, which is the red dotted line. I'm well above that. And then my insulin level is very high. This is about 75 units per day on average of insulin. So those are terrible numbers for a diabetic. They're terrible numbers for me, and that's one of the reasons that I'm starting the keto diet. So the white line over here represents the date that I got released from the hospital. In my first episode, I described what happened to me. I went into ketoacidosis and was transported to the hospital, was in ICU for 2 or 3 days, and so that really got me started on what can I do to fix that, correct that, and make sure it doesn't happen again. So that's when I was released. That's when I started tracking some of the numbers. This is my research week where I was doing lots of YouTube, books, reading, talking to people, reading commentary from folks that have been on the diet. And so that's this week in a snapshot. So my goal is to lower weight, lower my carb intake, lower my insulin, and lower my carbs. So everything on this chart needs to go down. So keto diet starts at the end of this week. That's when I am really starting to work towards lowering the carbs, and we'll talk about that towards the end of today's episode when I tell you about goals for the next week. So this is a chart out of the app called My Sugar, which I talked about in the last episode, and this is where I track my insulin levels, my blood glucose that I check 4 to 5 times a day, how many hours of exercise I get, what meals I eat, how many carbs at each meal. And so that's shown on this graph. So this is the first week, and the top line on that, and this is an output from the application. So I print this out. It's an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. I print this out and give it to my endocrinologist every 3 months. Hopefully this is going to make him really happy. But the top shows the average. So it shows my average insulin at 79% of it is 55 units of the basal background insulin, and 14 units is the bolus insulin, which is after you take before each meal. The estimated HbA1c is not accurate because I just started. Right now my A1c, which is an indicator of how your blood sugar has been over the previous 3 months. When I was in the hospital last week, my A1C was 11.5 or 12%, so over double what it should be. Very unhealthy. My average blood glucose for this week was 138. My target is 100, so that is way ridiculous. The deviation was plus or minus 68 milligrams per deciliter. My activity for the week was only 15 minutes, and that needs to improve. And then I had 3 hypo episodes where my blood sugar was low, and 17 hypers where my blood sugar was high or above what my target is. So I'm not going to go through all the details, but the little squares show what my blood sugar was. The red zone indicates that it's way above where it should be. That's a hyperglycemic. So 370, 285, 289, 317. That is so unhealthy, you just can't believe it. It should be at 100 or a little above or a little below all the time. So that's the trend for the first week after I got out of the hospital. Not good. The following day, on Monday, much better. You see lots of the green, which is 106, 124. It's close to 100 or within 20 or 30 points, and that's really good. So on the far left, you can see this totals up how much insulin, what my average carbohydrates were for the day, my average blood sugar for the day, and this day, Sunday, was absolutely terrible, but that's typical. That's the way I've been living for the last 3 or 4 years. It gets progressively better as we go down. This is the rest of the week. A few highs, a few lows, but at this point I'm still adjusting. I'm trying to reduce my carbohydrate intake, and when you do that, you have to lower your insulin. So it's kind of a guessing game throughout the day. Did I take too much insulin? Did I not eat enough carbs? So that's the struggle I've been dealing with over the last week, is trying to figure out how much to lower my insulin and how many carbs to compensate for that. So it's kind of a guessing game, but it's still fun. It's healthy. I'm getting healthier. So that's the rest of the week. I just want to show you this, that it shows the daily trends, my highs and lows. My endocrinologist is really going to like this because it shows my eating patterns, when I ate, what my blood sugar level was before I ate, after I ate, and in between. So just a really great tool for me to use and to provide to my doctor so he can see how I'm progressing. So I wanted to talk a little bit about lessons learned for the first week. And I really think that research and learning and talking to folks and reading comments and testimonials on folks that are doing this and have been doing this, it really provides a lot of support. You get understanding what to expect and to prepare for it. So that was extremely helpful. Thanks to everyone out there that's provided feedback and guidance through your YouTube channels and through comments. And as I said, I've learned a lot from fellow keto dieters. I learned about the keto flu, how to reduce its effects. Fortunately, for whatever reason, that didn't happen to me. The keto flu is, from what I've read, is it will cause you to have flu symptoms during the first week or 2 or 3 when you start keto, just because you're transitioning from a high carb diet to a low carb diet. And the way to combat that is taking a lot of electrolytes, so potassium, magnesium, sodium. I was already taking that, so maybe that's why I didn't get the keto flu. So that wasn't an issue for me, but I was aware of it. Sugar withdrawal was another issue that I'd read about. I didn't really have sugar withdrawal. I don't intake. I never have taken a lot of sugar. I've taken a lot of carbs, but not a lot of just pure sugar. So maybe that helped a little bit during this transition week. I learned what ketones are, how the body uses those instead of fat for energy, how to measure them and why it's important, and how to identify hidden carbs in many foods. So I went through my pantry and fridge, and I looked at some things that I thought were pretty low carb. You see sugar-free and you think, oh, that's low carb. And once you start looking at it, that is not low carb. Sometimes it's the opposite. You think it's low and it's ridiculously high. So I think it's learning to identify those hidden carbs that helped me out a lot during the first week. And also another lesson learned was just starting to transition to a lower carb diet. I wasn't drastic. I didn't cut out 20 or 30 grams of carbs a day. It was more like 10 to 15, just gradually over the week, just slowly eat less carbs, cut out the snacking, and try to get to three meals a day with no snacks, and then at the same time just lower the carbs a little bit. So that was my goal for this week. Also, I monitored my blood glucose very closely because as a diabetic, when you reduce carbs, and you're taking the same amount of insulin, your blood sugar can go low very easily. And for me, anything below 70 is pretty low. And I went down to 60, I think, at one point, or 55 this week. So that means you just have to, take less insulin. So it's a daily battle of monitoring your blood glucose very closely, knowing what you're going to eat, and adjusting your insulin daily to compensate for your change in eating habits. I also monitored the data trends that I showed you in the first couple of slides, and that's just to see, where am I trending? Can I see anything yet? And I think for the first week, not a whole lot, because I'm not really fully keto, I'm transitioning. So you saw a lot of the points on the graph were just kind of almost straight lines, or up and down, but they didn't move, they didn't trend didn't trend in a certain direction. So that's what I'll be looking for in the coming weeks is, how are all those numbers and the rest of my data? Are they trending the right way? Do I need to, adjust something, insulin, my diet, less carbs? So that's what I'll be looking for over the next couple of weeks. And then more detailed research into intermittent fasting. I've read a lot about that. It looks very interesting. There's a term called autophagy, that when you don't have food in your stomach for 24 hours or more, it starts, your body starts taking damaged white blood cells and repurposing them, not healing them, but turning them into good white blood cells. There's a lot of other really good benefits from fasting, so that's something that I'll be looking to do over the next week or two, starting off with maybe just 12 hours, eating twice a day, 12 hours apart, then maybe moving up to 18 hours where I go 18 hours without food and have a couple of meals over 6 hours. So that's another thing I'm looking at. It looks like it has really good possibilities. So that's something else that I'll be looking at over the next week or two or three. So that's lessons learned for this past week. And I just want to share my goals for the next week. I want to continue to lower my carb intake gradually and increase my fat uptake and keep my protein about middle of the road, not too high, but not too low. From what I've read, as a diabetic and as someone who's middle-aged, you need to keep your protein a little bit higher than someone who's on maybe younger. I think that number's around 25% of your intake should be protein. I'm closer to 35%, so not a big deal, but that's one thing that I'm looking at. So I want to exercise more. It's all low impact, just walking and stair climbing, and that's while I'm on the first maybe month or two of keto. After that, I'll reevaluate what I want to do as far as increasing exercise. I want to start checking and tracking my ketone levels. I've been researching ketone meters, so that's another thing that I'll start showing in a future video, is checking my ketone levels, what they mean. I learned about blood ketone index. It's a more accurate way of calculating your ketone numbers. I'll talk about that in a future episode as well. Another thing I want to do is I want to donate all my high carb foods in the fridge and my pantry to charity. Just get rid of everything that I used to eat. It's too big of a temptation sometimes to open that cupboard and you get food and stuff in there that you can't eat for a long time, if ever. So it's clean everything out, get that out of my sight so I don't have to see it, and that's another goal for the next week. I also want to find some recipes that meet my macro goals, and I think my macros are probably going to be 5% carbs, 35% protein, and 50 to 60% fat. So that's my plan for now. And then find recipes and meals that are easy. I love to cook, but I want it to be easy. I don't want to spend 45 minutes cooking in the kitchen for keto. I want something I can put together quick, and it's got the right macros. It's satisfying. It tastes great. And that's my plan for the next week or so, is to find a lot of those good recipes. And I found a lot, thanks to folks out there that have posted different recipes on YouTube. Those are awesome. I've got several that I'm going to be trying out. So thanks for that. And the last thing, most importantly, is just to have fun. Life's short. It's a journey. But, I want to have fun and be healthy in that journey. So that's it for my first week's update. Thanks so much for joining me, and take care, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.